Okay, welcome to another playthrough of Death Valley. This time we're going into the expansion pack with the Battles of the Shenandoah. We're playing the Battle of McDowell, and there's only one scenario for this, and we're doing that one. It's a small one, and this is an introduction to it. Gonna try to give you a bit of background on it, show you the units, show you the maps, show you the setup, and maybe give you a little bit of strategy. Still kind of thinking out what I'm going to do here with the battle itself, but let me introduce it here. So McDowell, if you are not sure, is actually located in the upper Shenandoah Valley on the West Virginia side of the valley. So let me just go through and give you some background on the battle itself. It happened after Kernstown, which is in one of my other videos. I've got linked to this in here. It happened in May 8th, 1862. And basically after Kernstown, Confederate General Thomas Stonewall Jackson retreated up the Shenandoah Valley, finally stopping at Swift's Run Gap to rebuild his army. By May of 1862, the threat from the north had diminished when two of the three Union divisions under General Nathaniel Banks were redeployed to support the Union advance on Richmond. However, there was still another force, led by Brigadier General Robert H. Millroy, approaching the critical town of Stanton, from the west. The Union force was opposed by Confederate Brigadier Edward Allegheny Johnson and the Army of the Northwest, which we'll actually see here on the map here shortly. Jackson had come down with a plan to drive the Union from the Shenandoah Valley, help relieve the pressure on Richmond, and consolidating several scattered Confederate forces and defeating two Union armies in detail. The first step was the Confederate armies were consolidated on May 6 and began advancing on Millroy's Union forces. Millroy retreated before them until May 8th, when he was reinforced with a brigade under Brigadier General Robert Schenk. That afternoon, the aggressive Millroy turned to attack the Confederate force and arrived at the heights overlooking the hamlet of McDowell. So this is, as I said, down in the upper part of the valley, out towards the West Virginia line. It's up in the hills, and you'll see that in the map. And let me just maneuver the camera here to allow you to see that. So here we see the main portion of the map. We've got a very large hill right here, Sitlington's Hill, right there, which is going to be the main objective for the attack. You can see in the hexes here, there's little stars, which are the victory hexes for the Union. I've also got them marked, as you can see, with little blue numbers for the number of victory points available for them. Another victory point hex over here for the Confederates to get points. And I'll explain those in a little bit here too. But the key focus of the battle is on this hill. And this is a very rugged hill. You can see from here that the top, this is actually not the top. This is a false top over here. The top is actually just off the camera, which I'll show you in a little bit when I dip the camera down. But this overlooks McDowell, which you can see is up here under this cavalry unit right there. That's the little town of McDowell. The slight rise over here where the Union is arrayed. We'll talk about that here a little bit later. There's also this little knob called Cedar Knob up here. We have two main roads, more like tracks, small roads here. The Warm Springs Road that runs north-south here into McDowell. And then coming off of that, heading east-west, is the Stanton-Parkersburg Turnpike that runs over there. There's also another small wooded road down here. Oh no, that's actually the extension of that going through the woods, and I'll focus in on that here in a little bit here as well. So this is the main area. This is all open in here. We do have a lot of woods surrounding it. So over here, as well as over here, we have a lot of woods to contend with. We do have some roads in there, as I just pointed out, which will provide some maneuverability. But a lot of this, the units are going to be moving over open, rough ground. Now, it's difficult to see where I'm at right now, but there's a lot of rough hexes here. There's angled hexes here, here, and here. There is a steep slope with 2 gradients going through that hex right there. And I did notice some with 3. I can't remember. Oh, there's some down here with 3 gradients going through them. So there's very tough maneuvering space for the troops, particularly coming uphill. But even coming over the hill that the Confederates are doing, it's going to be a little bit difficult. We do have a little bit of river, creek, I guess I should say, water hazards. We've got this one down here, which is unnamed, just coming off of the hill, coming off of Sitlington's Hill. And then we've got another one here paralleling the Staunton-Parkersburg Turnpike right here, coming down from the hills over here. A little hard to see, but in this woods over here, there is a ridge line that stems off from the hill and basically creates a slight valley here, but a larger valley just over here to the west, to the east, excuse me, that I'll show you here a little bit later. To the west, we see where the Union is arrayed. They've got a little more flatter terrain over here, a little easier to maneuver. But this will give way quickly to the woods and the hills. The other thing that's interesting about this game, and if you play this, you must remember that the contour levels are 50-foot contour levels instead of the usual 25-foot ones that we see in Death Valley. So there's a little bit more height advantage. If you think about it, it's actually going from a 12% grade on a 25-foot to a roughly 30% grade with this particular map. So there's going to be a penalty for moving, just a +1 for most of the uphill movement that we have here. So it's going to make it a little tough and a little tough to maneuver on here, but it should be fairly interesting. So let me slide you over a little bit just to show you a little bit more. So here's the rest of the map. And over here, you can see this is where the Stanton-Parkersburg Road meanders through the valley down through there. And then we actually have, if I scroll you down a little bit, we can also see where the Confederates are coming in from. Jackson's units are coming in down through here. We've got a little bit more of Johnson's units coming in, and then we've got Taliaferro and Campbell coming in, both on the 1500 and 1600 turns, first and second turns of the game. They'll be entering again through those hexes down there. And they've got to make their way up, meandering through the woods in here, up the hill to potentially defend. I think it's going to be a little bit tough for the Union to try to come down on this flank just because there's so much woods and so much terrain and so far to go that's pretty much probably going to be out of play. But as we come over to the west, where we can see a little bit of the Union units over here, this area is interesting because we have this little valley that comes up here, as I said, and allows units to get in here. There's a little tough terrain here, very steep in through these areas, but once you get past this steep areas, it gets a little bit easier and may be able to flow in through here. And there's a number of victory points here, here, and here that the Union could go after. The main route I'm thinking of is more to the north. Let me just tip you up for that. Right here, where we see all of the Union units over here, we've got a nice little road network that can funnel the units in over here and then prepare for the attack up here. But that's probably what the Confederates are going to be expecting and will align on these victory hexes over here. So it's going to be a tough battle up through here. Now, this is going to be primarily an infantry affair. Confederates have no artillery, and there's one cavalry unit for them. Union has a couple of cavalry units, mostly infantry, and it does have some short-range artillery. We're talking L's, H-12s, 12-pound howitzers, and there's one battery of Napoleons, which is their longest guns. So if they're going to try to use those, they're going to have to try to move them up, and over difficult terrain, it's going to be hard. But they may be able to come up and provide some defensive positioning here to kind of hold off the Confederates from that hex, and maybe some fire support up onto the hill with it too. But it will be interesting to see. But it's primarily going to be an infantry affair from what I can see so far in terms of how the units are arrayed and what the terrain looks like within here. So let's talk about the units here for a moment. Talk about Jackson. He is actually a corps commander in this particular battle. And let me just zoom you over here and bring you back to see Jackson. And we will tip you down. So he's a corps commander, and you can see that with his corps command. He's also a divisional commander too, so he's in charge of his divisions, namely Taliaferro and Campbell coming on. He is also corps commander to Johnson, who's up here, and we'll be able to give him an activation. Now, I should stop and pause for a minute to talk about the activations. During the turns, the regular turns, first turn they're going to get 3 activations each. There's no EM draw for this, for the Confederates. They will get 3 activations. Then both Johnson and Jackson units will get 2, but then Jackson can use his modifier here of 1 to up either one of those divisions with 1 more. So one division can get 3 AMs, another division can get 2 AMs off there. The lone cavalry unit will be able to get 3 AMs for them. As I said, they're primarily infantry units that we're dealing with once we get down to the brigade level. There's 2 brigades with each division. We've got Scott and Connor as part of Johnson's units. And as I said, Taliaferro and Campbell for Jackson's units. I am going to be using, and you can see some of it here, right here, I've broken down the 52nd Virginia, and I am going to be using breakdown units. So we will be able to get battalions. Slightly modified using some additional rules that have subsequently come out, as well as one of my own rules, to try to give a little bit more control over them. I like the concept of the battalion, the breakdown brigades into battalions, but I also like the capabilities within extended lines and being able to use that. So what I'm going to do is I'm still going to use this. They will be able to break apart from each other, but there'll be more benefits to staying next to each other, because I'm going to treat them, if they stay next to each other, I am going to treat them as an extended line for things like morale, which is an added rule in later versions of this, where if they separate, they will lose one cohesion for their UDDs if they're separated when they need to take cohesion checks. But if they're together, they will get their normal UDDs. The other thing too is if these guys are next to each other like that, they can use the extended line firing, being able to combine their fire into hexes or fire together as a single unit if they stay together. They must be side by side, and they must be staying together. So that's an important piece of it there. So again, trying to simulate that. Also, too, if they stay together, that will be declared. I should say that will be declared at the time of movement and the time of firing, whether they're acting as a single unit or not. Will be able to change from activation to activation and turn to turn. So you'll see how it goes as we go along. I've used it before a little bit, and I kind of like it in there, so I'm just incorporating that in. I think that will help, particularly as you can see these units down here, moving and getting them in. Otherwise, they'd have to be in columns, extended columns, which is a little bit tricky. But now as extended lines, they can kind of weave through the road a little bit easier, and particularly up over this wooded hill a little bit easier here as well. I think it'll also be easier for the Union units, particularly, you can see there's these guys just off the screen, which let me tip you up here. You can see here I've zoomed you in, and you can see that the 82nd Ohio has used the breakdown units. And you can see kind of the rough terrain they're going to get through. So they could independently move up here, and I think that'll be a little bit better for them. They can split off into battalions and get up over the hill. And we'll get more of the unions like this as the attack develops, and if I have more units coming behind the 82nd to go up Sitlings, Sicklington's Hill as part for the battle. So the victory points, let me get back to that here. So I mentioned about the victory hexes, and let me zoom you back out for a second so you can see that. Right here, you can see most of them are clustered here. There's one just off the camera to the south and one up here to the north. Those are worth a certain number of points. The blue numbers here, 2, 2, 2, and 5 for the Union, 1 and 1 for the Union, and then this red one here for the Confederates. They'll get 1 point for that at the end of the game for being occupied with that. Also, there will be points for step losses. So each step loss at the end of the game will be awarded 1 victory point there as well. Also, if the Confederates occupy all of the hill, all over here, they will get an additional 5 points at the end of the game. And again, whoever has the highest amount of points will get some sort of victory. A draw is between 0 and 5. So if they either side has between 0 and 5 differential, it'll be a draw. Beyond that, it'll be marginal, substantial, and major victory from there. Okay. So that is the victory for this. There's no other real special rules in terms of this. Another easy one. The only thing you got to watch for is, like I said, the movement. But I'll keep a close eye on that. It's also, oh, I should mention about the turns. The turns are 6 turns, starting at 1500, 3 p.m., and lasting till 2000, 8 p.m. And at 8 p.m. it'll actually be night, and then at 7 p.m. it will be dusk. So we will get a little night turns and dusk turns. So really there's going to be 4 major turns that will have some sort of action. And I think this first turn, given the space that they're away from each other, it's going to be a little bit of maneuvering to get in position, and maybe into the 1600 turn. But definitely by 17 and 1800 we should be getting into a little bit more action here. And as always, I'm going to record these as different segments. So we'll probably do turn by turn. I may combine 14 and 15 if there's not much action, and then have 17, 18, 19, 20 individually on there, and then wrap it up from there. So that's Battle of McDowell. So hopefully you'll stay tuned for the series and enjoy. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and leave some comments. Thanks for watching.